break from the Aviator U-Gears puzzle. We'll probably take a break for a few days before we get back to that. But just for today, we're not going to do any puzzle at all. We're going to go through the Action Bible. It's actually called the Action Bible, God's Redemptive Story. I believe there's a, let's see if we can get the name of who did it. Who gave it as a present. I think that's a Bible sort of tradition. Illustrated by Sergio Cariello, general editor, Doug Mouse. I think it's, I forget the full story, but it's basically one guy illustrated this whole thing. We just read his name a moment ago. Sergio Cariello. It's not the entire Bible. It's the Action Bible. So, like, I think right here, you can see Samson. Can see the angle here. He's, like, pushing apart columns, so that's Samson. This frog might be the plagues. This is Jesus, because he's holding the coin. Give Caesar what's Caesar. There's another Jesus story, the pigs. The madness going into the pigs, and the pigs running off a cliff. So, even this is like, that's probably Goliath. I mean, I'm just guessing, but it probably is. He looks humongous. So, these are stories from the Bible, the ones that were most suitable for illustration. So that's why he calls it the Action Bible. I've had this book for a while. I think I got it. I don't remember exactly when I got it, but I remember when I read it, I had jury duty. And it was one of those jury duties where you don't actually sit on a jury. I think I went there on a Monday through Thursday. Thursday might have been a half a day, and then Monday might have been a lot of admin stuff in the morning, but for Tuesday and Wednesday, the first half of Thursday and the second half of Monday, so probably 3 days total, I was sitting around waiting to be called on a jury, which never happened. So what I did is I read this book. And as I recall, it was pretty good, but that was years ago, maybe even a decade ago. So let's go through it now. Well, I'm not going to read it, but let's just kind of flip through it, see what we think of it. All right. The Action Bible. So it's, I guess it's in the same, it's not complete compared to the Bible, but it's probably in the order, somewhat in the order. It doesn't say Genesis, it says creation. And then it doesn't say the various books, it says fathers of the faith, and then it says Moses, life of Joseph. So it's sort of broken up by stories, not by the books of the Bible, but it's roughly in the order, I think. What is that creature? Maybe like some Leviathan or something? I don't know. There's obviously Calgary. And there's, I believe in the end of the Bible, Jesus, I think this is the very end, is what I think, after the resurrection. All right. This could be no, this is not word for word. This is sort of excerpted, but, I mean, look at this picture. This is like the beginning of Genesis. When it says, in the beginning there was nothing, and then God said, let there be light. So, there's light. It's not exactly a tunnel. It's nothingness. It's sort of like the opposite of a black hole. I would think of it like a black hole's nothing can escape, and this is nothing can enter, maybe. Kind of how it looks to me. Purple, yeah, it kind of makes sense. All right, so we're in it now. We're in the creation story. The Garden of Eden. Colored like an apple, shaped like a pear. I think that's a good decision because I don't think it really says apple in the Bible. I think that's like kind of a tradition. So you mix an apple and a pear, and that seems about right. Did Adam? I was gonna say before I turn the page, did Adam have a beard? I mean, he didn't have time to grow a beard, right? If it was like the pacing of the Bible, but I mean, I think he was probably old enough to grow a beard. Interesting. I mean, it's not like he's not born bald. I mean, Eve has like long hair. I mean, you think they'd both have crew cuts if they were just born that week, or if if they've got an initial build out, then you would think Adam would have a beard. But anyway, I think if I was doing it, he'd have a beard. But in this book, he doesn't. All right, Cain and Abel's story. Burning the sacrifices. That was a weird thing, right? Sort of an Old Testament thing to burn sacrifices. I'm really a fan of Christianity. It's tough to say that without seeming like. Let me just pause for a second. Does that look like that character from the like the pyramids with like the bird face? What is going on here? They worship the sun and the moon and the stars, and they bow down before idols. Yeah, this kind of looks like that bird creature. It's got the wings and the bird face. Like I think it's like carved into some pyramids. So anyway, I'm a fan of Christianity. The Old Testament is like much harsher, but it's there, and we're not going to pretend it's not. And I think that it could have a place. There's another video on my channel called The Fourth Turning. If I can remember it correctly, it's something like how does it go exactly? Strong men create good times. Good times create. I think I'm skipping one. There's like 4 of them. The fourth turning. Like strong men. No. Hard times create strong. Hard times create strong men. And it's gonna 4 of them. Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create bad times. So, can the Bible be viewed in that same sort of structure? I feel like bad saying that because, Jesus got tough a couple of times in the Bible, but mostly he was pretty nice. But, maybe that's just our interpretation. Maybe Jesus was tougher than we all think. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. They're still in the Old Testament here. Rainbow. Is this must obey? Is this Moses? Rainbow promise. Oh, this is Noah. So this is Noah. Okay, makes much more sense. Well, then where are all the animals? Did I turn the page? Yeah, okay. There's Noah. So this is like post-flood. There's the the Tower of Babel. Has anyone seen the pictures? I'm glad they drew it this way because there's some pictures online showing a similar Tower of Babel. But if you think about it, it kind of looks like there's like one brick left here, but another interpretation is it's like this whole section's gone because it's like not complete. And then there's this thing, it's a real picture, but it's kind of shared like a meme, and it'll show like a painting of the Tower of Babel that kind of looks like this, but incomplete. And then it'll show some EU office. I don't know if it's like the main EU corporate center or what it is. I forget. But they'll show this like this EU office building, and it's basically shaped just like this. And it'll be like on this side it's finished, and then on this side it's scaffolding. Almost like, I mean, what are they trying to say? They're finishing the Tower of Babel? Is that what they want to do? Is that like a good goal? There's some weird things that go on. You really need to keep politicians in check, NGOs in check, any of these like international conferences, anyone who thinks that they're in charge. It's really important to remind them that they're not, because that's like what the whole Tower of Babel story is about. Like, that's what God did. God's like, oh, you think you're like so smart? I'm going to change your languages so you can't even talk to each other. You got to be careful of anyone who thinks they know what they're doing and is going to determine it in advance. That's like the opposite of evolution. You know, people talk a lot about evolution, and pre-planning, that's the opposite of evolution. Like the big thing now is with they'll call it green energy, but it's really not. If you look at where the energy comes from, it's just an inefficient version of the dirty energy. They're just like, they're processing it out of sight, not in your backyard, and they're transmitting it and they're storing it, but there's a lot of inefficiencies. They have to create the batteries and the transmission lines and the towers, and there's leakage, and there's, so it's like they sit in a conference and they tell you how something's going to work rather than just putting a product out there and seeing how it does. And I understand that sometimes you got to build in advance, like the highway system and the railway system and spoke and hub delivery systems. But I think those had stronger arguments than a lot of the green energy investments that have been made. I think those it's time for them to like succeed on their own or stop being funded by tax dollars, because they could be doing more harm than good. All right, but let's focus back here. So Lot. So I guess at some point we're going to see a pillar of salt. There she is. Lot's wife turned into a pillar of salt, right? This is the Sodom and Gomorrah story. This is controversial these days. Oh, who knew? Controversial. The Bible. I guess you cover the Bible on YouTube, you might get some topics that get you in trouble. I guess Sodom and Gomorrah is probably one of them. Without judging anyone, I'd say there's a lot of practices that any sort of person might get involved in that aren't safe. I think that's a good word to use. Just look into the type of things that could get a person, transmission of disease is one of them. But another one is you do things that aren't, for example, right now a big thing is surgeries to alter people's body, whether they want to change to look like a cat or they want to change their gender. Some of them, I'm not going to comment on all of them. I'm not going to pass judgment. But anytime you do something that's not part of nature, you now lose all the built-in assurances that come with nature. You're now on your own. You now need medicine for the rest of your life, medical care for the rest of your life. You've changed your body. It's no longer gonna run the way it was, whether you call it creation or evolution. You no longer can rely on that. You've made a change, and now you gotta support that change for the rest of your life. All right. This what story is this where the ram is caught in the bushes? Is it Joseph? Is it this young, the one with the coat and all the brothers? Oh no, Isaac. Okay. I'm not sure what story that was. I'm embarrassed that I don't remember. I think I know the New Testament better than the Old Testament. Birthright stew. I feel like I should have went through this before, because they're kind of all familiar, but I'm not remembering exactly. Like, who is this guy right here? I know the story, and it's, I can't remember the names, though. Okay, one of them is Jacob. So, I guess the father is, like, blind, and it's Jacob and Esau or something like that, and he gave the blessing to one when he meant to give it to the other, or something like that. Stairway to Heaven. Interesting coloring on this one. Very bright. Where is this going? Definitely comic booky. I know that it is a comic book, but it's like kind of an old-timey feel to it. The colors are so bright, and there's so many colors. It's not as modern, but I imagine it was done over years, maybe even decades. It probably wasn't commissioned by some big publishing house. It probably was just a passion project. And I think you can tell that even just at the beginning here, how small that is. The fact that this is in like Comic Sans or whatever, it definitely looks like it wasn't a huge project. Though it was a huge project in terms of the single person's, Sergio Cariello's work on this, but it wasn't a huge studio project. I don't think there were many other people involved, but I think there was a lot of time from one person. And by the way, that's the type of work that you should seek out when it's one person working on a book this big. It means I can just tell you from experience making comics, you may at best do 10 books like this in your life, and it's probably less than 5. Like, you gotta stick with this, work in comics for a long time to do 10 books like this. Most people don't do one. Like, my first book was 290 pages. There's comic book Hall of Famers who've never done a 290-page project. I'm just looking to see how many pages this is exactly. Well, it's like 724 here. All right, let's see. If I go right to the end, what's the last page number we can get? 780. Well, these are already like this is interesting. It's showing the verse from the Bible and the page it shows up in this book, so that's cool. We got a little index to navigate it. Deuteronomy, Judges, Samuel, Ruth, Kings. And so this is in order. Remember no, it's not exactly. It's not in order, because like this is 189 and 208, and that's from Numbers, and then Joshua's 190, 191, 92. So there's some logic to it. It's possibly is chronological order, but it's not biblical. It's not strictly biblical order, although it does kind of move that way. All right. Is this the escape from Egypt? Well, it looks like a pharaoh, right? Wisdom of Ben. Here's another one of those Egyptian winged sun god kind of symbols. So there's definitely, they're getting out of Egypt here. Or maybe they're just in Egypt. Maybe they're not getting out quite yet. Excuse me. More Egyptian headdress. This is Moses, right? He was the one put in the basket and sent down the river. So there's little Moses. So when they leave Egypt, that's the the 10 plagues, right? Is it? Okay, the burning bush. Moses talks to the burning bush. Well, God talks through a burning bush. Spokesman for God. This story is getting a much more detailed narrative than many of the others. Did you notice that? This Moses story is like, this is like a comic book. Like, this is how you would normally do a comic book. I mean, it's very detailed. It's like they're not skipping much. Look how thick that is. And it's still going on. Now we're going into the plagues, the red, the blood red sea, the frogs. I think we saw that on the cover, right? I'm not sure if it's, let's see if we can spot that exact drawing of the frog. That's it, right? So we thought it was a branch, but it actually was a bowl. So this lady got some frog soup, which she did in order. So that's from the cover. They condensed it a little. That's the same lady, that's the same frog, that's the same bowl. But they kind of like cut and paste the frog, just, save some space on the cover, make it a little dramatic. They also have the frog jumping into the frame with Jesus, which is a little weird. And you've also got the illustrator's signature right there. Anyway, this might have been one of the first ones he did, or maybe he might have released this as an individual comic, because this is a complete story right here. Some of them they're going through like books of the Bible in 2 pages, whereas this Moses story, first of all, it's got a black border around it, which is a little different. And then second, it's like 50 pages here spent on this. 20,000 Egyptian. So that's the actual escape, the parting of the Red Sea. Is that what it was? The Red Sea, I think. They parted some sea. I don't know if it was the Red Sea or not. That's where they found some scrolls, right? The Red Sea. Well, I don't know. It might have been just the sea. I don't know if it was for sure the name of the sea, but there it is. The sea's parted, and they leave. And the complaining begins. So now they're going to go through the desert. And I think they're going to make some golden calf at some point, or something like that. And then Moses is going to die before he gets to the promised land, as I recall. They wander 40 years in the desert. Armed battle. So are we still in the same desert? Good advice. All right, yeah, the 10 Commandments. Wow. Yeah, this is there's the golden calf. This Moses story is totally done out. This is the complete story. This is not a recap. You can this is going to be an individual comic book. A little bit different. I don't know what to say about this. I was tempted to call it a little bit different style, but it's really just the coloring that's different. The style, the shot is so far away that I can't comment on it. It's just a blurry, vague thing here. I mean, I understand it's like people on a mountain. There's a tent city here. There's another mountain there. There's no detail. But should there be, from a shot from 20,000 feet up, or however many feet up they were, 800 feet up? Counting the numbers, quail coming out of the nose. Sibling rivalry. All right. I think I'm impressed with this book because someone stuck with it to 800 pages. And that Moses story was done well. But I think I'm not super impressed with this art in general. And it's not to say that it's not good. It's it is good. Everything's proportional. Proportional. There's a lot of detail. It's colored, not my favorite style, but a lot of effort was put into the coloring. I think it's just, even though it's called the Action Bible, and this page has a lot of action, but it doesn't. There's something stale about it. Like, this is an action page, and this is an action page. You see a bunch of guys standing up with arrows. You see a bunch of guys pulling arrows, but you don't see arrows in the air, and you don't see a lot of people falling or jumping. That's like a thing in comics. Is see how these guys are all like standing on their feet? You can't do that. There's something. If like everyone is touching the ground, it's like, they have race walking and they have the rule like you have to have you got to keep the legs bent and you always have to have one foot on the ground. Comics are the opposite. People need to be in the air and they need to be like bending their limbs and they need to be falling forward or backward because you're just getting like a still shot, and you need to give something that gives more information. Like if the person is like falling down, you now know what happened right before and what's going to happen after. Whereas if they're just standing there, like this guy, he's like standing there's a snake and his like hands are up. But what if he was like on his heels and like leaning backward with his hands up? Like that would be even more. And like this guy's leaning forward. This guy's leaning forward. They both have their feet on the ground. This guy's also leaning forward with his feet on the ground. It's like, I don't want to just say that the poses could have been better. It's something more than that. It just doesn't have that energy that some of the better books have. I mean, yes, you can, the pose, technically I'm talking about the poses and the shot selection, but I want to describe it as energy because that's the way it's interpreted by the reader. Great job on the costumes, that's for sure. I mean, like, there's 800 pages here. There's probably 300 different stories, each with their own costumes. That couldn't have been easy as an illustrator. And also, in order to illustrate so many books of the Bible, you've got to read and contemplate all of those books. That may be one of the best things about working on a project like that. It's like, oh, there's the Ark of the Covenant. It's like a thing that forces you, like taking on this project forces you to spend more time with the Bible. The Electromagnet, the first graphic novel for Electromagnet was called Electromagnet, the Book of Revelations. And it was kind of made like that. I mean, of course, there's a point to it, but it also kind of made to sound like Book of Revelations, which is the last book in the Bible. And the book 2 of Electromagnet, which has been on hold for a long time. I've been working on other stuff. And actually, sadly, it's been on hold so long that it's not as relevant. There was a lot of stuff that kind of predicted what tech companies were going to do, but now they've already done them. So it's not like a prediction anymore. Anyway, Electromagnet started in 2013, came out in 2016. I guess the best hope for the second book would have been 2019, which didn't happen. It's now 2023. So I don't know if it'll even ever will happen. But anyway, it was called The Ghost Spell of John, based on the character in that book John, who at the end of the first book, he received the wings from Noatel. And then in the second book, he's kind of under the spell of the character Ariel that appears late in the book. She kind of like was trapped for 5,000 years, and then she shows up, and then she takes the wings. Noatel, spoiler alert, dies in Electromagnet 1, and she takes the wings and gives them to John. So he's going to have them in the second book, Ghost Spell of John. All of that story was just to tell you it's like Gospel of John. But instead of gospel, it's Ghost Spell, which I don't know. Someone might say it's like blasphemous, maybe, to use those sort of similar names like Book of Rebel Nations and Ghost Spell of John. But my mom is very religious, and she didn't say anything, so I guess it's either not obvious or not that bad. And I think either one is okay. If it's not obvious, then no one's even going to notice. And if it's not that bad, then it's probably not that bad. My theory is that, any mention of God is a good thing because you're keeping it in people's brains, and then they might go and read the Bible on their own, or look at a comic book like this, or watch a movie, or go to church, or just do anything. And just don't let the pop culture shut down any talk and knowledge of God. Though it's always kind of been like that. I mean, people like to portray that there was an old times when everyone was religious, but that time is past. Or another trick they like to do is say, oh, you're religious because you're young, but then you grow out of it. I don't think either of those is true. I think that the percentages of people in the old times versus now is similar, and I think the percentage of people who believe young and believe old is similar. Like, I don't buy either of those arguments. I think if you believe in God now, keep believing in God. There's no reason to stop. Is that what a lion's arm looks like? What? That looks like a man's arm. But maybe lions look like that too. I'm not sure. I mean, look at that shoulder. Do lions have shoulders like that? I have to go look that up. Looks like a man's arm to me. But maybe lions do have shoulders that big. They probably do. I'd have to look at a reference. So this is David? Is this this is David and Goliath. So we're on page 281, and we're just getting to David and Goliath. Look, he's got the sword. You think on the next page he's going to be holding Goliath's head? Let's see what happens. No, they didn't show that. But it's kind of implied. He's like standing on his back with the sword on this previous page. Jealous king. Well, in the New Testament, that would be Herod. I don't know in the Old Testament who that is. This is a good comic book image. You got the spear making contact and thunk. I will say this, though. There's little chips here, but there's no chips in the wall. There should be cracks in the wall as well. Something to make some impact. But at least there's some little chips flying out. There's another good one. So, probably some of the stories have better art than others, have more action than others, have more like storytelling information in visual form than others. And that, again, is this project probably spanned years, if not decades. So the artist himself, Sergio, he might have went through phases. He might have become more skilled. His preferences might have changed over the course of doing this book. His, art style might have changed. I don't think so, though. We're like almost halfway through. I don't see any changes yet. I feel like I need to start turning the pages quicker because we're 34 minutes in and I'm not halfway through this book yet. It's definitely impossible to try to recount all these Bible stories. I think I'm just going to start turning the pages quicker. All right. Nice frames here. Yeah. A little bit different style on that section. Yeah. People just don't leave the ground in this book. Even when they're running, even when they're fighting, no one ever leaves the ground. Is that like Frank Miller's secret? He has people in the air. Is that all of like comic books' secret? Just get people off the ground. That's the NBA's secret, right? Is everyone's always jumping in the air. American Ninja Warrior, everyone's always up in the air. Maybe that's just exciting. When people, the ground is boring. You got to be up in the air. Jets are exciting. Rockets are exciting. Drones are exciting. People just like air. Like even lions and tigers, they're often jumping. Goats are often climbing. Pigs aren't exciting, right? What do pigs do? They like squat. They're on the ground. They're rolling around in mud, digging up mushrooms. And nobody's like thinks pigs are exciting. Fish sort of fly, but in water. Like even this. Come on, look at the legs on this lion. Is that the way? The lion's legs should be together, right? Do they ever have that? That's like humans have legs like that. That's an interesting one. But again, both legs are on the ground. This lion easily could have been climbing this tree, or he could have been jumping through the air. Why are his feet on the ground? It's a comic book. You're drawing it. You're under no obligation to attach things to the ground, but it is. Everything's attached to the ground. Why? All right, I'm going to pay very close attention, and we're going to count how many pages we go until we find a character with at least 1 foot off the ground. All right, 1, 2, 3. Well, this guy's feet are off the ground, but he's on a horse. The horse's feet are on the ground. I'm not sure if I can count that. All these guys are running with both feet on the ground. What is this, a recounting of David? Well, anyway, he has 1 foot on the ground, 1 foot on Goliath. These people's feet are on the ground. This guy's lying on a bed. They're all sitting on the floor. This guy's riding a horse. They all are connected to ground. They're all grounded. There's nobody in the air yet. I'm not sure how many pages we've turned. What's this? It's like a different type of writing. All right. Guys, again, everyone's grounded. Workers all feet firmly planted on the ground. These guys are walking up steps, and none of them are caught with a foot in the air. They each have 2 feet. Their feet are on different steps, but their feet are all on steps. Can't tell. These people have long dresses on. Workers are all flat-footed. This guy's kneeling. These guys are standing on the roof, but, the building touches the ground, and both their feet touch the building. These guys are all on the ground. This guy has a pose like he's running, but he's got 2 feet on the ground. Laying on a couch. I don't think these people... Yeah, 2 feet on the ground. The golden calf is back. All right. This guy's laying on the ground and both his feet are touching the ground. This guy is again running with both feet on the ground. This is just, we may never see a person take their foot off the ground. This guy's got his feet on the ground or off of the surface. And that, all of their feet are on the ground. All right, this horse, the horses have their feet off the ground. And that gives motion to the horses. So at least horses can have their feet off the ground. I still haven't seen a human yet since we started looking. All the humans are grounded. This is amazing. He's laying down. He has his knee up, but his foot is on the ground. Is there a purpose to this? Or am I not supposed to notice this? Because now I can't think about anything else. All right. Feet on the ground, feet on the ground. Well, those guys are carrying hay bales. Of course they're going to have their feet on the ground. Guy's sleeping in a bed. Horse has his foot off the ground. So does this horse. So the horses can take their feet off the ground. The humans cannot. We have a strict rule for this book. Humans may not lift their feet off the ground. These guys are all either kneeling or dead. They are all planted on the ground. All right. Nope. That's his arm. Is this guy off the ground? Yeah, I can't tell. I think that this page has several people with their feet off the ground. And then the very next panel also has several people with their feet off the ground. So, did we enter a new story here? Or a new phase of the story? Krakoom. So whatever this Krakoom, something exploded. Someone shouts, "The Lord is God," and now suddenly nobody's touching the ground. Look at this guy. None. This guy has 1 foot on the ground. This guy's 2 feet off. 1 on, 2. Okay, 2. This guy's completely off the ground, 2 feet in the air. All right. It didn't last. So we had 2 panels of feet off the ground. Now they're back. Everyone's back on the ground again. But this page and the top of this page, their feet were all off the ground. Sound of silence. Right. Back on the ground. All right. I should stop counting because we did find 1 page with their feet off the ground, but I don't know. I'm just like, I'm keeping it in the back of my mind. Because it's going to be really strange if there was 2 consecutive panels with people's feet off the ground and no others. All right, what's going on here? Some flaming horses. Chariots of fire. Okay. Flying cloak. Rash of miracles. Got a bear attack here. We're up to page 410. And I believe we're still in the Old Testament. I wonder if there'll be like a marker when it comes to the New Testament. Anointed Jehu, painted Jezebel. Yeah, it's definitely Old Testament still. See, again, the arrow is not in the air. The arrows, I think all the arrows we've seen so far are impacting or about to be released. But they're exciting when they're in the air. I don't know. Is it like a reference thing? Like someone standing there posing and they can't pose in the air? Well, they could jump in the air and then you could take a picture and then use that as a reference. Oh, is this the whale story? All right. I think so. I see a guy drowning and some jaws around him. It's got to be like Jonah in the belly of the whale, right? Is that a whale? That's something. All right. Some scrolls here. And they have names on them. Micah, Joel, Amos, Hosea. Burning coal. That looks like the same box that the Ark of the Covenant was in, but now instead of like winged cherubs, there's fire on top. I'm not sure. Maybe that's just a generic look of an altar. Hezekiah is healing. All right. What's this? This looks like the genie, Aladdin. It's like the lamp and the smoke and the vision. It's like I expect Robin Williams to jump out. What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? Something like that. Why do bad things happen to good people based on kings? Habuka? Unpopular prophecies. Yep, yeah. That's the problem with prophets. It's like bearer of bad news. And then if it happens, they don't think you're a prophet. They think you cast a spell on them. Ezekiel's exile. Oh, that's cool. Looks like some like ancient alien starships here. It's a vision of the glory of God. Fire bursts from the clouds. 4 creatures back with 4 wings and 4 different faces flash back and forth like lightning. By each creature is a wheel. Within a wheel and above all this is a glorious throne. Well, there's definitely something going on there. Got the lion face, the eagle face, I don't know what you'd call that, a bull face. These look like, I mean, again, this is from Ancient Aliens. Who are these guys? They got the wings on the horses, the human face with the beard. What's the name of those people? They're like from before the Bible. I forget their name. The cuneiform they did. I can't remember the name right now, but you've seen them. They did that story. Who was that guy in the flood? Before Noah. That famous, like, that Epic of Gilgamesh or something like that. And now this is going to bug me. Who are the name of those people? I probably could Google it. They were like famous people. I'm just going to Google like first human society. And there's probably a bunch of different answers for this. Some people Google first human society on Earth, because maybe they were somewhere else. All right, yeah, this is too late. Basically, those people with the beards and the heads on the horses, they're not, Google's no fun lately. They like follow like the Wikipedia rule or something like that. It's basically like 10 years ago, you could run a Google search and you would get not only like the mainstream answer, but you would get like the ancient aliens answer. Nowadays, when you Google, it's like you might as well be asking like a college professor. You like can't get any other information. So now I can't know the name of these people because they're like, you know, they don't like to go. College professors don't like to go back that far. What is the name of them? And you can't use DuckDuckGo anymore either. They're like, that one worked for a while. Now it doesn't work. Oh, here's that creature. He was. Where did we see this guy? During the chapter headings or something? Beast from below, writing on the wall. Is this Book of Revelations? Yeah, based on Daniel. Okay, so it's not exactly Book of Revelations, but it's the kind of like the story that inspired Book of Revelations, this Daniel. So he had all this crazy stuff. Numbered, measured, divided. Yeah, that sounds pretty bad. Stone Age. I added 10,000 years ago, and it starts telling me about the Stone Age. So I'm gonna have to watch Ancient Aliens to remember the name of those people because Google is not giving it up. They definitely had those beards though. We're up to page 500. Still not in the New Testament. It's just going to go very quickly through the New Testament. All right. New Testament. But page 521. New Testament starts on page 521. Life of Jesus. The art style suddenly changed. I wonder if he did these earlier or later than the New Testament. You see that the coloring style changed, the drawing style changed. I'm almost wondering if it's the same person or not. Well, it could be the same person, different period, when their taste changed. You know what's interesting about seeing this visually is I think you sometimes forget, people sometimes forget when they're listening to the New Testament that Jesus was Jewish. Like when you see it drawn out, you're reminded there's like rabbis everywhere and they're in that part of the world and there's all this traditions. I don't know why. It's like, it's weird, right? Like in modern society, people will act like Christianity is something so different. I mean, Jesus was Jewish. I mean, it couldn't have been that different, you know? Because not only was he Jewish, the apostles were Jewish. The writers were Jewish. I think maybe one of them wasn't. Was it Paul or whoever? I think maybe one of them wasn't, but for the most part they were. John the Baptist, he was like. In general, though, I don't like when people nowadays. It's like I don't know if it comes from Hollywood, and then people feel the need to like repeat it on social media or in real life, but people will act like, oh, I'm from this heritage, so I do this. What? Anyone from any heritage is allowed to do anything. You don't have to do something or not do something because you're from some heritage or you're not. I mean, every person is an individual and makes their own decisions. There's the pigs. Were they on the cover? Yeah, there's the pigs. They were on the cover. And the boat sleeping through the storm. Jesus slept through the storm. Interesting. Who is this? Is this going to be the John? Yeah, John the Baptist. So then, you know what's in here, right? In this, so here's the dancing lady, and she's getting delivered this plate with kind of a large, lid on it. I don't think there's a turkey under there. Here's the baskets with the loaves and fish. That was an interesting story. Don't they nowadays try to do that with meat, like they do cellular reproduction of animal flesh? It's like a thing, right? They like capture the animal flesh and then they try to replicate it, but not through like an animal, like not through a living animal. They try to recreate the conditions that trigger the cellular automata, and basically they try to grow flesh. Like they get 2 ounces of flesh and they grow it into 20 ounces of flesh, and then they split it into 10 2-ounce pieces and do it again, or however it works. It's kind of gross when you think about it, but at the same time, it's supposed to be a mimic of how it works in the body. They're just like mimicking it outside of the body. Still, though, it seems like there's something wrong with it. But that loaves and fish story was kind of like that. It's like they started with like 3 loaves and 2 fish or something like that, and then they gave it out to everybody, and then when they collected it in baskets, then there was way more. That either means that people were hiding food and they all started sharing what they had, or they multiplied. I think people probably shared all their food with their neighbors. Once they saw others sharing, they started sharing. But who knows? At your house, do you make individual plates for people, or do you make one-pot meals that everyone scoops it out? When you don't know how many people are going to be there, like we had tonight at our house, chili. That's a one-pot meal. You make it in the pot, and people scoop out as much as they want. If you make, pasta, mac and cheese, or a lot of different things, they're like one-pot meals. But if you make lasagna, now you're cutting it into pieces, and now it becomes obvious what size the pieces are. And if you're making steaks, then it's like real obvious whether you got a steak with a bone in it or you just got like a couple of pieces cut off. I think that's like another way to prevent waste is to combine the food into like a one-pot meal. Like if you give everyone like a fish, maybe they don't finish their fish, and it's like you only can feed as many people as you have fish. But if you take 3 fish and you put them into fish soup, and you add potatoes and you add water and you add string beans and you add, whatever they could collect from those fields and make fish soup, and then you start scooping it out for people, you'll probably end up feeding 10 or 20 times as many people. I think I heard of some place in India where they feed like 50,000 people a day, like lentil soup. Something like that, if I'm remembering that correctly. So here's the crucifixion. Jesus has the crown of thorns. There's that curtain ripping in half. I believe that happens at the moment that Jesus dies. So there's Jesus. Sealed tomb. I guess we're getting near the end. Although there are those like tales of the apostles afterward. All right. last command. Right. There were like multiple sightings of Jesus. Is this in the Bible? Or is this from another story? I forget. You know, there's so many of those tales of Jesus after the resurrection, but I don't think there's many of them in the Bible. I think a lot of them are in books that weren't included. Books that didn't make the cut. There's a lot of books like that on the New Testament. On the Old Testament, there are some, but again, how we were talking about how Jesus was Jewish, there's a lot more books. Like the Old Testament, the Bible is New Testament, Old Testament, but it's like the books that made the cut, but there are other books. But then then the New Testament, there's like 100 Gospels, but there's only 4 of them made the New Testament. But then in the Old Testament, there's also a lot of books. Not all of them made the Old Testament, but a lot of them are still read, for example, at the Jewish temple, but they're not read as part of the Old Testament. But there's even ones beyond that. So, you know, like there's like the Dead Sea Scrolls for the New Testament where they have like, actually I spoiled it. It's not just the New Testament. Basically, there's other books. There's a lot of other books for the New Testament, but there's other books for the Old Testament too. And one of them that you hear a lot, you know, it's like an ancient alien, as we were talking about before, is Enoch, like Book of Enoch. There's a lot of that. It supposedly covers a lot of pre-Noah. I mean, we did pre-Noah. I mean, we did Moses and we did Genesis, but there's not a lot of detail in there. And supposedly this Enoch fills in a lot of that detail, and it's supposed to be pretty crazy. So it's not in the Old Testament, so we're not going to, you know, pretend that it is, but I mean, it's one of those things like Ancient Aliens would cover. What's going on here? Is this Revelations? I mean, it looks pretty crazy. I got a bear, squid, an eagle, walrus. I don't know what's going on here. Peter has a vision. A voice commands him, "Get up, Peter. Kill and eat." Oh, that's interesting. Get up, Peter, kill and eat. Okay. Death to the tyrant. Excuse me. So this is like post Jesus here. And that's Saul who becomes Paul, the blinding light and the witness. You know, some people come up with, people will say crazy things. They'll say like, oh, he had a stroke and that's light is a sign of it or something like that. That's like crazy things people say. And I'm not saying that it's not true. It just sounds crazy. Yeah, so now we're into like the Acts of the Apostles, which I feel like I should know, like sorcerer. Where's this sorcerer? I'm not familiar with that story. So we all kind of know Jesus' story. But apparently there's a lot of other stories here from these apostles. Probably I should spend some time with them. I mean, if they're in the Bible, right? I'm also still trying to remember those curly bearded people. They're like really famous, but I can't remember them right now. I think there's even like, I can't remember. All right, I'm going to search pre-Egyptian people. Pre-ancient Egypt people. No, that was stupid. I don't know. I can't remember the name of these people. I'll mention it on tomorrow's show. I'm sure it's going to come to me between now and then. Trouble in Thessalonica. We're very near the end here. Oh, Paul's writing the letters. You know, like when you're in church and they say a letter from Paul, there you go. There's Paul writing the letters. By the way, maybe they're going to say the name on this page. Antioch, that's not it. Well, I guess that's all the places Christianity spread to, or that's where Paul was writing the letters to, right? A letter to this, a letter to that. That's probably all the places he was writing letters to. Ephesian mob. Not sure what that story is about. There's not that many pages left. He may not cover the book of Revelations. No, there's not enough pages. There's no way he's covering it. This, I think, is Peter going into prison. Paul's letter to the Philippines and the Colossians and the Ephesians. Well, that's basically the Bible. I mean, all those books, those letters that Paul was writing. Final letters. Book of Jude, Book of John, Book of Peter 2. Final days. Okay, here's Revelations, but they're doing it very quickly. There's like that dragon with 7 heads and I guess 10 crowns. I don't see any crowns, but there's the 4 horses. There's Jesus like in charge, right? I mean, that pose indicates Jesus in charge, and he looks different. He drew him different when he was. That was interesting. Like they drew Jesus when he was alive, the way he probably existed when he was alive, but now they drew on him in. Well, I'm saying when he was alive, he's always alive. When he was on earth walking as a man, they drew him looking like a man of that time, but now they're drawing him like King of Kings. I mean, look at these like flowing locks, and look at the lighting, which is how it should be. And even he's just like physically bigger. Like he looked like when he was walking the earth, he looked normal, but now he looks like Jesus. And that's how he looked when he was walking. So why does he look so powerful here and so normal here? What is this page? Through the prophecy and revelation, Jesus gives John a message for the 7 churches in Asia. Some people at those churches have been faithful followers. Some have turned away from Jesus because it was too hard to follow him, and some just want things to be easy. Jesus' words to these churches are still relevant to us today. Yeah, that's interesting. Sometimes people are honest. Really, they'll say negative things about Jesus, and at least they're honest about it, that they care more about what they're into than Jesus. But then other people will say like, oh, that stuff's all fake and don't listen to it. It's just a book, and it's 1,000 years old. Like, why would you listen? And they just want to do what they want to do, which is outside of the Bible. I think you don't have to. There's so many things you can do in this world without breaking any rules. And I'm not saying like that I'm the morality police. I'm just saying that you don't need anything beyond. Like, there's Sergio, by the way, Sergio Cariello. Like, there's so much in this world that you can do that's fun and that you'll enjoy, and then there's other things that could pay off for you physically or financially or spiritually. There's so many things you can do that don't hurt anybody and don't break any rules, and I just think people sometimes want to break rules. I mean, it almost seems like they're glad that the Bible made rules just so they can not follow them. I know that sounds like crazy. It's not what I'm into, but sometimes I wonder if that like makes it more exciting for people. It shouldn't. I think that's a terrible philosophy, but how else do you explain it? Because some of the things that people seem to be into, I don't get what's fun about them. I think there's plenty of fun to be had while following the rules. I think there's 1,000 lifetimes of fun to be had while following the rules, and there's no reason to break them. But that's not what everyone thinks. I can't tell you, Anyway, I think it was a good book. Great work by the Sergio Cariello, or however it's pronounced. Thanks for watching. See you again tomorrow.